Hello, everyone. Sorry, we are a few seconds late, but that was down to me today. My camera was just not working for some reason. But it is
Technical
now.
issues. Technical
Technical.
issues.
Technical.
Yeah. What we needed was, do you remember when there was technical issues on TV back in the day, like a cart, something would have appeared. We maybe need to get one. Yeah, we need to get one of them ready if it ever happens again. But we hope it doesn't.
Yeah, get a test card type thing.
Yeah, test card. That's it.
With the scary clown and the little girl with the chalk.
Yes. Oh, playing Noughts and Crosses. Was it Noughts and Crosses she was playing?
Noughts and Crosses.
That's
What
it.
on earth was that about? Who knows? It was pretty scary. And yet, here's the most scary thing: is as children we used to sit and watch it for hours, thinking that it might do something.
Did it make like? Is it my memory, or did it make like a low buzzing sound in the background when
that was just
on,
your tinnitus.
Oh, was it? Or really bad TV?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, no, TVs made a really low buzzing sound all the time. Do you remember TVs used to have to warm up?
Yeah.
Once upon a time, long time ago, TVs used to have to warm up, girls and boys. Anyone that's too young to remember that, you missed a treat there.
And this sounds like a bit of a sort of a Peter Kay type story, doesn't he? He likes to go back to talk about old TVs and videos where you used to have to put the instruction over the light, over the numbers, and things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, I'm going to continue this story for a minute because I love old tech. And I'll even segue it into ergonomics in a minute.
Yeah.
Back in the day as well, we used to have black and white TVs. You remember that, everybody? Right? Yeah. TVs didn't always used to be colour. My first TV in my room was a black and white TV, and it was one of those Ferguson ones. It was like white. The actual TV was white, but with a black and white screen. And to get the channel that you wanted, you had to dial it on a little dial.
Yeah.
Right? And then you would spend all night one hand holding your headphones on because you didn't want your mum and dad to know you were watching TV, and you had headphones on, and the other hand holding the dial. Right.
So
and then a foot holding the aerial.
Yeah, that's the thing I remember I remember the dial and the aerial, but they were both on the device. They were both on that device at the same time, weren't they? They weren't sort of separate. You did have to dial it in and sort of get the aerial.
Well, you had like a loop aerial on the top.
Yeah.
Normally it was, and like the little spring thing used to break, and you used to have to try and get that in. But you used to have to get the angle absolutely right with the dial to get the picture, and then you'd have to hold it all there whilst holding your headphones. Imagine that. Anyone that was born after a certain date wouldn't remember any of this.
Now, how bad was that for your posture, Graham? All those, you were like a contortionist, weren't you? Arms here, legs there, all sorts of things.
Oh, we've lost our guest. Our guest has disappeared. Maybe she'll pop back any second now, which will be.
Is it our conversation maybe about early 1980s television sets that's maybe put her off what this show could be all about?
I don't know. I'm just gonna message them. Say you've gone. There you go. Perhaps they'll be back any second now.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. But we've got a guest coming up soon. Now I've not been feeling very well today.
No, you said.
Yeah, you can probably hear it in my voice. My voice is really going.
What are you drinking there?
It's just juice.
Right? Okay.
But yeah, I've got 3 lives today. 3 lives today.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And I've got to do with said voice.
Yeah.
And
is this the first? Is this the first live of the lives?
This is the first of them.
Right.
And I've just got to tell you this, folks, as well. What is going on with doctors? What is going on with doctors, right? So I tried to phone the doctor this morning. I thought I'm actually going to try and make an appointment with the doctor and see if I can sort this out. So I phoned the. Yeah, right. You're laughing because and with all good reason to laugh because actually it's an impossibility. So I phoned the doctor, and the doctor said, or the thing said, you can't phone the doctors today. We're too busy.
Yeah.
Right. So put the phone down, but visit the website. So I visited the website, and on the website, because it's all new now,
Right.
you can make an appointment. So I had to fill in a whole load of forms, had to take some photos, upload photos, all of that sort of thing. Did all of that, and it said, "We'll come back to you in 2 days."
Yeah. Not much
Like,
help. Not much good if you want help today, though.
it's absolutely tremendous. That's what I'm going to say. That is, but interesting is I'm already waiting for a doctor's appointment. My first doctor's appointment, right? Which is meant to be like a test to do with cholesterol and something like that. 2.5 months. 2.5 months. Wow. There you go. So anybody that knows what's going on in the world of the doctors, please let us know. We have our guest back anyway.
Yeah. Isn't the default position, just whilst you bring the guest in, to send you to the pharmacy? Have they sort of tried to palm you off on Boots or anything like that, as in go and see the pharmacist?
Yeah, that might. Oh, apparently our guest's PC switched off. I think that is the thing. But out where we live, the doctors and the pharmacists don't get on. Little known thing.
Oh, really? Is this some sort of local beef that they've got with each other?
Oh, yeah, they kind of like blame each other.
Okay.
So if you go into the pharmacy, they go, yeah, no, the doctor hasn't done anything with that prescription. Yeah. And then if you go into the doctor's, they go, oh, that pharmacy's never done anything.
I've sent it down there. He should have it. So you just end up, it's a bit of just.
And you say, look, can you go and sort yourselves out, right? And you imagine kind of like that scene from Two Tribes by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, with both of them at each other's throats like that. And then maybe some of us might get some half decent thing. Anyway, welcome to Wow Ergonomics. We've cleared up a lot of stuff already there.
We have.
But that's we're just keeping it real. That's what some of us feel. Anyway, I'm going to get rid of that and bring in our guest. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm relaxed now.
Hello. Now, I know, because I've spoken to you before, that is a printing press in the background there, isn't it? That is a printing press. But your job,
I knew you were going to pick up on that. I was going to move it.
But your job isn't actually to print T-shirts all day long, although you do a bit of that. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, I'm Marianne Mills. I'm 2M training. I'm also the Care Connector network, but there wasn't enough characters for that, so I couldn't put that. I've got so I put that first. I've got my own training business. And what do you want me to talk about? Like what I do now?
Exactly that.
I used to work in care. My background was care, sort of back in the day. And then I did a psychology degree. I hated every second of it. I know why now. And then eventually it took me to doing my teacher training. And then I decided to train carers. That's what I did for a little while. Worked in schools and colleges, and then I fell into teacher training. So I started to people find this concept really bizarre that I teach, which I think is fairly self-explanatory. Would you not say?
Yeah.
When I say that to people, they go, "What do you mean?" They say. Surprisingly enough, people that teach need to be trained to teach. So I do that. And also I joined recently with a colleague of mine with the Care Connector network, which is something that where we're hoping to bring the care sector together. So people that supply the care sector and people who provide care, bringing the two together, because the care sector's in a bit of a mess.
Yeah, well, this is where we first had a conversation, and I think it's really interesting, because one of the things we've talked about before on this show, Stephen, is the fact that everything's in silos. Everything.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that Marianne has identified is within the care sector, everything's in silos. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work, does it? What have you seen out there in terms of it not working, and why have you then trying to put this Care Connect thing together?
I think, well, the Ian Clegg, who started, he was the founder of it. He started it up because, like me, during the pandemic, because we were both self-employed, neither of us got any help. So there was no financial help. So all the working that I was doing stopped, same for him. But also, obviously, everything that was going through in the care sector, his background was in catering. So he was a chef, but his mum was a nurse. So he had quite a passion for that. And what he saw out there, which is what a lot of people see, is the care sector is absolutely up to here, and just don't have time for anything. And I think some people hope that maybe the government will fix it. Well, we can keep hoping for that one, because that's not really going to happen. There's been a lot of change, because you've got a lot of people, rather than having locality and the private, which can be good, but not also necessarily good, because it depends what someone's reason for being in it, whether it's the money or not. So if you take someone like me, for example, so I've got my own training business. If I want to go and get work, I will contact care homes, care establishments. They haven't got time, because they're completely up to their eyes doing what they do every day. So they don't respond back to me, which I understand. They then need somebody to do some training. So they will then go to Google, because that's where most people go. And they will then contact, a training company who can afford to be at the top on Google. Because let's be fair, most of us aren't going to spend ages, they don't have time. So they then book somebody. They think they've booked me, as they haven't. I had to go through an agency because I couldn't get any work. So then in the end, what they've done is they've paid probably 3 times as much for me as I'm getting, because somebody else is going to get that money. So, and as I said to care providers, that's because I tried to contact them, but they're busy and they don't know I exist. So the whole idea with the network is that the care providers, so we have a platform, which is the Mighty Network. So there's no worry about all the algorithm. So they sit in, they go in their own little group. So managing directors, carers, whichever one it is. And then as a supplier, I'm a supplier. So I then go into any of those groups, and I can tell them what I do, effectively sell to them. But the whole idea is about networking, not just and educating and that kind of thing. There's nothing out there like it, but trying to get the message out there is really difficult, because the care sector don't necessarily engage so well on social media. So it's quite, because they're busy all the time. But the whole concept works and everybody likes the idea. It's just trying to get it out there a little bit more.
And the thing is, you've just told everybody about it, so that's really, really good. That's the starting point. Stephen, do we see an amount of this within our sector?
Working in silos.
Yeah,
I think so, and I think that's one of the things that's become sort of really obvious, isn't it? Is there's multiple issues, but people have to go and see multiple different people to resolve these issues. It's really interesting. I read an article earlier this week on the BBC's website. It was about a lady who, I can't remember what the number was, but she suddenly had like 18 different health professionals who were looking after her, and I think she used the phrase that she was almost project managing her own health, etc. And as I say, I'll find it whilst we're chatting and get you the numbers, but it was really interesting that's how people feel. And yeah, I think it is a problem across our sector as well, Graham, is that there will be multiple issues, but people have to go to multiple different people to resolve them, and then a lot of them can be sort of intertwined issues. So actually having one person to deal with that and one with that and one with that, actually it isn't the case of knocking over dominoes to resolve it. Some of them are intertwined, so they need one person or one group to resolve all those issues at the same time, because dealing with one first and then the other second isn't necessarily going to resolve the whole issue.
We've got a comment from ex-man of the BBC, reporter extraordinaire and friend of the show, Richard Harris.
Pigeon watcher.
And pigeon
I
watcher.
couldn't have said that better, what he's just said.
Yeah.
Totally. That is the problem. And because, sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox on this now, because he's just started that off. Because there's no real legal requirement for so I go into a care home or somewhere and deliver training. Often nobody will actually ask who I am, what my credentials are. I know that I always go above and beyond and I would always, as a carer, I always deliver care as if it was one of my loved ones being looked after. And when I deliver that training, I'll deliver it over and above what it would need to be. But there isn't, which people are really shocked about. That you don't have to have a training qualification, and you don't have to. There's nothing actually out there. When I set up, I said, "What do I have to?" Like, coming from a academic background of teaching, it's there. It tells me what I have to teach, but there isn't anything, which I just really find quite shocking. So the problem you do have, which I deliver teacher training in many different sectors, so construction, engineering, rail, sewage, whatever. There's often standards there. So those people have to have a training qualification to be able to deliver training in their sector. And then when I tell them there isn't one in the care sector, they go, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Well, there isn't. There aren't really any standards as such." And
well, isn't it crazy? And isn't it interesting that when you're talking about something that's medical, because it is, right? Care sector's medical. And Stephen, let's bring this back to the ergonomic sector as well, right? And I know, there'll be some of our friends out there who would love this discussion, but the level of disparity between one person and another in terms of ergonomic assessments and the qualifications or the experience that they've got in order to carry out those is ginormous. You can literally have somebody go and do a DSE assessment on somebody and they've had like half an hour in a room with someone. And yet you then have somebody else who's got 10 years worth of experience behind them, has studied lots of different disciplines, has done lots of different, has possibly done a degree in ergonomics or they've got qualifications in human factors, they've got qualifications in other areas. How can you expect the quality level and the level of what you're getting, and yet everybody gets paid the same?
But this is the same with training. This is the same when I say to people, I was thinking about this during my Pilates class, actually, randomly. I don't really know why. Should have been
as you were standing on your head. Yeah.
I was just thinking that I forgot what I was thinking now. I just forgot what I was thinking, and that's my brain.
That tends to happen on this show. This tends to happen on this show.
It's my brain. It's my brain. Oh no!
Look, have you got it? Come on.
That you don't. When I say to people about having to be that I'm teach people how to teach, they always seem surprised. And I said, but I was thinking, but I wouldn't. Well, I can't actually do carpentry, but I'm thinking about something I might do, and then say that I am a carpenter or I am an engineer or an electrician, of which I couldn't have any clue to do those things. But it would be like me then saying I am that because I can do some of those things. So when I hear people saying they are a trainer, I think, well, actually, you're not really. What you do is you tell people about what you know. And then people go, yeah, but that's the same. And I go, actually, it's not. It will be like somebody going and teaching my children or yours, just standing in a classroom. You'd expect someone to be qualified. And I said, but it's exactly the same. So as you were saying, Graham, it's, I know all this, not all, the psychology behind it, which is why, quite often when people come into the room with me and they go, oh, I know everything. And I go, well, you do about your sector, but I'm going to teach you about how to work with people, essentially, because that's what a lot of people are surprised about, that there is so much there, about I let people eat and drink in the classroom. And some people say, well, I wouldn't let them. I go, well, fine, don't let them. I said, but you're not going to get the best out of people if if there's a reason why they can't, then obviously. But I said, if people feel relaxed and they feel comfortable and they're happy to be there, they're going to learn more. So it's entirely up to people. If you want to be an idiot about it and be big-headed because that's not what you want, then that's fine. But you're, in terms of what Maslow says and other psychological theories, you're not going to, people aren't going to engage as much. I guess the same thing with people working from home. That whole idea that if people are comfortable and happy, you'll get more from them.
Marianne mentioned something at the very start there, Graham, that you were saying about how does it tie back to our world. The instinct thing was around like requirements and legal requirements and things like that. One of the things that we've always said, and we've been saying it for years, that sort of undermines everything, is that DSE regulations are just guidance and not the law. And therefore that you can, and you were talking about the disparity in the quality of assessment, Graham. I go even one step further. The disparity is to who gets an assessment and who doesn't, because different companies, different organizations interpret the rules differently, and some decide to do something and some decide to do nothing. So it's all being undermined by the fact that there's regulations there, but they are just guidance and not the law. And therefore that sort of resonates through lots of different industries. There's lots of people doing lots of good things, but if it's not mandated, however you do that, then you're going to get a massive disparity between almost the haves and the have-nots, who has been assessed and given the reasonable adjustment and who hasn't and is continued to suffer and have those problems.
It depends what the motivation is, I think, behind. I spoke yesterday because we've just got some funding to be able to offer funded training in West Yorkshire. So we put it out there to ask, what interest there was, of which 2 companies got back to us. And I'm thinking there's absolutely free training out there. And eventually I spoke to this guy who's got a managing director of a care company. And he said, yeah, really, really interested. And it was really interesting because it's only then when I got talking to him, I said, oh, he just did the course on teacher training that I deliver. And I said, wow, that's amazing to hear the managing director is doing that. That's really good. And he said, yeah, so I can deliver the training. So I said, okay, great. Is your background care? And he said, no, it's not. And I said, oh, would you mind me asking what brought you to it? He said, well, I was an accountant. I thought, well, that's a far cry from it. So, and he was quite high up as well. And basically what happened was his dad had Parkinson's, and he was saying that his dad had carers, and when he came to see him in the evening, he hadn't had a drink for 4 hours because the carers hadn't left the drink for him. Spoke to the company and they said, okay, we'll sort it. Next day, the same thing happened. Next day, he got a call. He was away in London and his dad had fallen and broken his hip because the carers were outside smoking and hadn't come in, and he'd fallen. And he said, I just knew that I had to do something, and he'd wanted to change. And I just knew that then when I was talking to him about, he said they only take on private clients. And he said, because what we can pay the carers based on what the local authority pay isn't enough. And he said, the carers we've got, we pay them well, and they say that they, and then he said they were going to a care show yesterday and he was going to go and take lunch down to them, and you could just tell that motivation. But unfortunately there are, and I'm not saying all by any stretch, some people that are motivated by the money that could be bought in if you have a care company. But unfortunately, unlike say you had a restaurant, your income could be whatever. If you introduce extra things or you put your prices up, with care there's going to be a ceiling to what it is. So unfortunately, one of the things that will go, as the guy said before, is training. If you haven't got to have it, that's a massive thing you can cut back on. And then because of the pandemic, hey, let's just bring e-learning in. Let's do moving and handling on e-learning, shall we? Because that's a really good idea.
I love Richard's second comment here, which is fantastic. I think there's a correlation between the care sector and ergonomics.
They do say that.
People say, well, care is instinctive, so you don't need training. In a similar way, to say, well, sitting down comes naturally to me, so I don't need ergonomic desks or chairs. That's it. That's an intelligent statement. Thanks, Richard. It's true.
I need to speak to Richard. I like him.
Yeah. Oh, we love Richard.
Brilliant.
He's got a great brain. I mean, but that is true. I mean, we're both in one of those areas where people don't necessarily see the need.
Isn't it a legal requirement? It comes down to,
unless it is a legal requirement, and yet by ignoring it, the results of that can be catastrophic.
Totally. Yeah. I heard I work with, I've trained somebody in the sewage sector like you do, something completely different. And you'd think that, so the company I've been working with, they they don't have to train people. They sell machinery. They don't have to train the people that are buying it. There's no legal requirement from them. But then this is where we have a problem, because then when something goes wrong, everybody starts saying, which I know something that happened recently, oh my gosh, who we're going to blame here? So they're going to blame the people that sold it and said, oh, well, you trained these people. Well, actually, they didn't have to train them. They didn't actually have to train them. So then the blame falls onto the company that, say somebody gets injured or somebody dies. So then the blame then gets put onto the company who own the equipment. So did they train them well enough? Well, here we have a problem because there's no legal requirement. So actually, in the end, in a situation I know about, probably somebody will go to prison. But actually, you want to say to yourself, well, if there wasn't a legal requirement, it was almost asking for that to happen at some point, because there was nothing there. Well, you know me, Graham, I'm very black and white about some things. I'm very grey about other things. But these are one of the things I am. If you don't tell me that I have to do something, well, how can I be in trouble if you didn't tell me I had to?
I've got a question for you, Marion, which is, have you ever thought about going into insurance? And the reason I say that is
because
the reason I say that is this the danger, though, in both these areas, is that's where we end up. Because if we look at the way things happen in America, for example, as opposed to here, the fact that we do not have tight legislation around these particular areas, right? Care, ergonomics, etc. Are we not risking heading towards a more litigious culture where actually what's going to happen is things will go wrong and people will start going, I'm suing. And actually, that's when companies are then going to have to wake up and go, right. And then it's down to, they might not be wanting to spend money on the training now. You wait till they have to spend money on insurance.
But that's it, isn't it? I think if there aren't any consequences to something, I mean, really, even any of us at work or anything, or the higher the consequence, the more likely it is we're going to obey, whatever the rule is. So yeah, I think, and that's exactly it, because care company, unless the motivation behind it, as I said with that guy, is the right thing to do the right thing, then yeah, if there's corners to be cut. And unfortunately, ironically, training's the bit where people say, if there's a problem, blame it on training. But if we need to cut the budget, let's cut it from training, which is the irony. And actually, when you then look at all of it, then people say, well, people don't have to be trained to be able to live a training. And I said, well, for something that everybody said is so important, there seems to be a lot of money not being spent and a lot of cutbacks going on.
Yeah.
Graham, I know we'd spoken about two sort of news articles or statistics that sort of came out this week, and I'd sort of ahead of the show sort of reread them, but I'm just opening one now and just looking at the statistics on this, and it was about the number of people not working due to long-term sickness.
Yes, I heard
and
this.
It was 2.5 million people, which is 400,000 more than pre-COVID. So typically for every 13 people currently working, one person is long-term sick. So that's really interesting.
Wow.
But the line that sort of intrigued me was it blamed an increase in mental health issues in younger people and people suffering back and neck pain, possibly due to working from home. So, we'd been banging on for ages about this, about sort of a bit of a sort of an Armageddon that was going to happen due to the fact that there was a lack of investment or people swerving the guidance. And hey presto, whilst it doesn't specify of those 400,000 extra. It sort of highlighted mental health and neck and back issues. So I got no idea what the actual number is, but it's identified as one of the key issues. So this was spoken about. The legislation is guidance and not mandatory, and therefore, hey presto, look what happens. You've got 1 in 13 people are off long-term sick, of which a contributory factor is the fact that people have got neck and back issues. And we've discussed it loads of times. Why is that? Because people are not sitting correctly, they're not being given the right equipment, and they're not being regularly assessed.
Everyone sits up.
I've been to Pilates, so I know.
But the thing with that as well is that, you know, and we've said it before as well, it's not a case of just go and buy your people equipment. Comes back down to why we've got Marianne in here today, etc., because it comes back down to training again.
It is, and it's that whole. I just put a post this morning on social media, and it was about. I speak quite often, and I do. This isn't because I'm being sexist. It's what I see in a lot of male-dominated sectors. I was speaking at the doctors the other day about this. That within very male-dominated sectors, there is, in terms of mental health, there's a lot of, we don't want to talk about things, and I've heard it quite a lot, you know. But then I hear. So what I try to say to people that are going to be in training, you can be that change. It sounds really like godlike, but I said, you can be that change. To which one guy said to me once, yeah, that's not what we do. And I went, well, that's why you're here. He said, yeah, but I'm here to teach a subject. And I said, but actually, that's not all you're there to do. That isn't all you're there to do. You know, you can, I'm very open. You know, I was diagnosed with ADHD nearly 2 years ago, and I'm very open about that when I teach. I'm very open about most things, and actually what it does, it creates that culture in that room when I'm teaching, and I watch all these men open up about stuff, and I say, when you go back, oh well, no, I'm not doing it there. I said, well, then you need to. I said, because you're the one that people are going to look to, and actually, you know, okay, you can't change a whole sector overnight, but where else is it going to happen? Managers, maybe? But actually, it can start from there, from being that role model, because that's essentially what you are being. And so that, ironically, that I do quite like that. I do find that when I do get men that are very, this is how we always do it, and, you know, they are my challenge, but actually I do talk them round in the end to see that, you know,
it's interesting you brought that story up, actually, because and I don't think I've ever shared this on this show, but I've had occasions, Stephen, when I've been out assessing in the past where with men, and it's never happened with when I've been assessing women, but with men where they've gone, okay, I understand that that's probably the problem, but can we not write that in the report? Can we not say that? Can we just kind of leave that between us?
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know how this.
But what's that saying about the company culture? What does that say?
People are scared, yeah. Which even I think if you've, but then it's almost like Mental Health Week this week, which I'm on the fence with whether I agree with it or not, because to me it should be every single day. You know, I lost my dad to suicide 21 years ago, and that was never really knew the reason why, but I know why. He'd lost his job. He was 58. He felt useless. He was far from that. And so I very much see that thing about how men feel that there still is that whole idea of men being the main breadwinner and being the one that's, no matter how much we move away, there still is that. And I think it will be there for, you know, quite some time still, you know, I think. But it's there must be something out there that men feel that they can't say, and whether, I don't know whether it's across companies or whether, because sometimes you'll get the higher up managers, won't they, and they'll speak out about having had depression or something.
And for me, this is why it comes back down to again, it comes back down to education, because, and actually I was speaking to someone yesterday about it, We had quite a long conversation, and they're in the sector of sort of culture change within businesses, and we were saying that, fundamentally, what we can't continue to do is we can't just carry on doing assessment stuff at the surface without doing bigger culture change pieces and bigger training. Yeah, because if we go in and just do an ergonomic assessment with someone and say, okay, we've kind of stuck a plaster on that, etc. But, as we go in and we start talking to that person, they go, we understand that actually there's deeper psychological, mental issues there, or specific learning difficulty issues there, and we can't get them to talk about it openly, and we end up just going, they end up saying to us, well, yeah, give me the mouse mat and I'll be all right. Give me the chair, I'll be all right. Then we've not really resolved anything in this. So for us to be able, as an industry, the ergonomic industry to really be able to implement a change and massive effect on businesses, we need to see the culture change happen within those businesses as well.
Is that management? Where does that come from? Because I often wonder
it's got to be management. It's got to start from the top.
And I wonder if that's in care, that there's the management training in terms of the day-to-day stuff that you do, whereas that's part of what Ian and I will be doing, which is behavioural leadership management, which is the actual looking at people and how you work with them. So it's not the same, but quite ironically, people say with the teacher training, people come on it and say, God, our managers should come on this because they learn a lot from you. And I say, well, it's just about working with people. It's not, it's not actually rocket science, but if people don't know how to, there's all of this at the moment. Graham, about my ADHD, and I do training for companies so that they can understand what the needs of their workers are, which is very hard to try and get in anywhere. Maybe a bit more now because it's trendy to feel like you're doing the right thing. Sorry, I shouldn't say it like that, but that's how it does feel. And actually, I say, it shouldn't even take loads and loads of stuff. It should be that culture where people feel able to say what they need. And even when I do all the training, when we talk about what it is, so neurodiversity, but we talk about what ADHD is, let's just say, and we talk about what that program was this week that was on. But that if people don't understand what it is, so I talk about the actual neurology so people understand, because people still say to me, but if you tried a bit harder, surely it would be okay. And I said, but you wouldn't say to, we've moved away, thankfully, for people with dementia, where people said they forget things. And I say, no, it's not just about forgetting things. It's like roads in your head that are being closed. So when someone says to me, try a bit harder, or try and concentrate a bit more, or surely if you just did this, no, actually. And if you've got people that don't understand that, if you've got a manager doesn't believe it's true.
It's so sad, isn't it, that we still live in a generation where we've got people like that. It's like saying to someone in a wheelchair that's a double amputee, if you try a little bit harder, you'll grow your legs back.
Exactly. And people say,
come on,
it's not the same. And I say, it is, just because I look like. And actually what people don't get is every single day I try my hardest, every single day. And so actually now I look back and go, Chris, I got a degree, I did this and this. And that was actually pretty good to be able to have done that, because I didn't even know at the time. And I just know with work, and that's probably why I'm self-employed now, because working for somewhere doesn't work. And that's why, again, in construction, in care, there's such high rates of people go in and out of jobs. So I spoke to this guy yesterday and I said, actually, I look back at my career within care, and actually if somebody had done something with me and gave me a career pathway, I might have stayed, but I'd stay for a while and go, I'm bored now, and then I'd be on to something else. And then it was great because it's given me a lot of experience to train with, but actually, and that's the whole thing now, is that of trying to look to give people a reason that when you're training them to do their job, actually train them so that they don't leave. most people don't go to a job and go, do you know what, I'm going to leave within a few months. That's not necessarily what what they'd want. I get off my
Marianne, about it being about it being trendy, and I know it's greenwashing is the wrong phrase to use, but is there an element of that you're seeing, that people are just putting on these programs, etc., just because they think they need to do that, or because they actually care?
I think there are. I think it's a bit like. Do you remember a while ago with restaurants when? Well, it's the same really with anything that's to do with eco-friendly stuff. It was always really expensive and you couldn't get them. And then it was like, oh God, global. So then companies go, oh, we need to be the ones that are doing that, because then it looks really, really good. I'm being really cynical here, but so then you can get things. So then the prices go down a little bit more. And then and then restaurants, we've got to have stuff that's got low salt in it or whatever it is. So because people will want to come to us then, because that's really good. And I can't help but think sometimes then that whatever the issue is that's out there, that companies will look better for it if they are, putting that on. And again, that depends on what I probably sounded like I'm being a bit cynical there, but I'd want to see that, like you were saying, Graham, that it actually, let's really get to the bottom of all this. And my colleague Lucy, she goes in and actually works with people and works in companies where she's working with people that have got burnout, that kind of thing. Because if you just, like you said, if you keep putting a sticking plaster over it, it's all going to go wrong at some point. And people might stay for a bit, or they might do this or that. It's a bit like I say, cutting back or just doing something on the cheap. Yes, it ticks a box, but I'm not up for tick box training because I don't see the point. I mean, when I teach people how to teach, I probably over and above because of what my background is, but I can't have somebody just leaving, just passing. So somebody said to me a while ago, how long is it going to take me to get the assignments done? And I knew what they meant. And I said, well, you could get them done in a weekend if you wanted to. I said, but really, the learning happens the minute you leave here and you start putting into place what I've taught you. Because if you're doing it just because you want to tick a box, you might as well have not done it, quite frankly. And actually, thankfully, because of the way I teach it, people do come back to me and say, you've made me look at things in a completely different way, because I thought it was just about telling people what I know. And I said, but there's people that want to share what they know, and there's people that want to show off what they know. And you can go back to school even and look, or people that you know. And I'm a share what I know person. I laugh and say I teach people to earn more money than me, which isn't funny, but it's actually true, because that's what my passion is, that I want people to do what they do and do it well.
And do you know what? You can add to your list now that you've done a live.
I have.
There you go. You can breathe
and survived.
A sigh of relief.
Lived and survived.
And you did. You survived live with me.
Well, I'll tell you what. You've got your T-shirt printed there. You could actually print that on a T-shirt.
I was going to wear my top. I should have worn it. We would have looked like twins. I've got Stephen. I've got a jumper that I did, and it's got "Born to Disrupt" on it. Which
it's a great phrase.
I'm a disruptor.
Great phrase. Marianne, thanks so much for coming and joining us today. Do you know what I love about this show? As I was listening to it all today,
is it not working with me?
Yeah, of course it is. But also, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, is that you think about the conversations we've had over the last few weeks, or whatever. It's so diverse, and yet we still maintain a kind of core element to it. But we do have some amazing conversations over so many sort of different sectors as well, which I think makes it incredibly interesting. But I think the prize for today ought to go to Richard for his segue between care and ergonomics, because I think that was absolutely fantastic. So
I do want to speak to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're now listening to this on catch up at home on whatever platform it is, there he is, popped up again.
Oh, what a gent!
Really good listen. Yeah, thank you. I thought it was a really good listen. Thank you. I thought it was an incredibly interesting discussion today. If you from the ergonomic sector or the care sector, you've never heard of either or, and you've enjoyed this conversation, or you want to join in the conversation, please do. Just carry on the conversation and do get in touch. If you want to come on another show, let us know that as well. We'd love to have you here. You can catch up on all previous episodes at wowergonomics.com. It's all up to date. You can go there and see last week's or any of the. I think we're nearly at 100 episodes now.
It can't be far off, can it?
Yeah, 100 episodes of this. Wow. On Spotify. I'll let you know when we get there. We'll have a banner. We'll have a party.
Yeah,
there we go.
Definitely.
But Marianne, thanks for coming in. Stephen, thanks as normal. And thanks for everybody that listens and listens on a regular basis. Until next time, we'll be back next week when we've got Barry coming in. Barry
from EastEnders.
From EastEnders, yeah. All right, okay. Yeah, EastEnders. He's coming to sell his apples and pears to us. All right. Barry from where is Barry from?
Well, we're not going to say that. We want people to come and listen next week. So we'll have a Barry with us next week.
Barry from Barry. But he'll be on. Barry will be on one of the Barrys next week. Until then, bye for now.
Bye.